So let me take you back to 2007. The Spanish construction industry was booming. And well, about Wall Street, we all know how Wall Street was doing those days. Well, Ariel and I, my co-founder, we were just at a great spot, just graduated from college and going into those two promising industries. So it was simple for us. We had a straight shot of becoming gazillionaires.
And then this happened. Pretty much our industries got destroyed, annihilated. All of a sudden we had companies that were thought too big to fail that were disappearing overnight. This made us think a lot about our careers, our prospects, what mattered to us. It laid the foundation of what today is a computer programming school in Spain. The caveat about this school is that it's founded by this guy who's a civil engineer and this guy who's an investment banker. Yeah, I know it's random, doesn't make any sense, but we're not embarrassed about that. We think that's totally natural and not only okay, but absolutely necessary in the new economy that we live in. This new economy, for Europe to compete at a global level and innovate, we're gonna have to have a mobile and very skilled workforce that can move from industry to industry. It can move into industries that don't even exist at the present day. So in the context of Spain, in Europe in general, where we have these very linear careers, very linear trajectories. We go to college, and then we get a master's, and then we work in a big company in a related field, and then we maybe get a few promotions, and then retire 40 years after. That model is no longer viable for Europe or for the rest of the world, and we need to change that. Our bet is that most of us here in this audience will have to reinvent ourselves at least once over the next several decades. We've done it already, and we know it's not easy. So we're gonna address a few things, barriers that we face and that make this transition very challenging, and hopefully we can help you in this transition. The first thing is spotting the problem. You can't ignore the science. And I think deep inside each and one of us, we know. In our case, the economic environment was a catalyst, but the signs were deeper within. We were dissatisfied with our trajectory. We didn't like what we were doing. So in thinking about the science, it's very easy to scoop it under a rug. Say like, oh, maybe I'll try next year, I'll do this eventually down the line, but you can't. You have to be very disciplined and never compromise. So one thing that we did was ask ourselves every day, did I do something at work that I enjoy? Am I having an impact? And write it down at the end of the day. If the answer to those questions was no, for consecutive days and weeks, it's probably time to rethink your career. Another thing that people are very surprised about is, you two guys don't know anything about programming. How did you manage? We think if you're passionate and driven enough, skills don't really matter. They matter eventually, but you'll learn what you need to learn. And it's incredible how much we were able to accomplish in a very technical business without having ever coded a single line of code in our lives. Ever since, we've learned a lot. And I think in the context of our current day, where we have these TED Talks, we have MOOCs, we have meetups, there are just no excuses to say that I can't acquire the skills to make an impact in the industry of my choosing. For me, the psychological barriers and the emotions attached to the transition were probably the biggest challenge that I had to cope with. Let me tell you a story about what I loved about investment banking. And no, working 100 hours a week and doing financial models wasn't at the top of my list. I loved hearing my mom talk with pride to her friends that I was an investment banker. I loved going to a bar and having a girl ask me what I did for a living and felt so comfortable that I had the right answer. It's sad, but investment banking became a part of my identity. My career was part of who Ariel is and who he was. And that was okay as long as the Dow Jones and the S&P kept going up. But then the crisis hit us. And in one day, they let go 50% of my group, 5-0. The guy in front of me, the guy to my left, the guy to my right, and you're sitting there waiting, say like, what now? It's like, how do I project myself to my friends? Like, who am I? So it wasn't a crisis of, am I gonna be able to pay the rent next month? Or it wasn't about career stability. It was an identity crisis. So one thing that bothered me a lot was like, what are my banker friends think about my transition into entrepreneurship or technology? And the sad but comforting reality is that people really don't care that much. We're so self-absorbed as human beings that we tend to think that we're at the epicenter of the universe, and that everything that we do is going to be dissected and judged by our peers and our family members. But the reality is that our friends are as equally as self-absorbed as we are, and they're thinking about what we think of them. So don't self-impose peer pressure and social stress to your transition. Another thing that I think you got the sense from my anecdote is that you need to separate your career from your sense of self-worth and your identity. I would never ever let again external factors or the economy determine my success and my sense of self-esteem.
So when I went into a bar and girls asked me what I did for a living, I did not think, I was not so confident as saying I had the right answer. But yeah, I also made the transitions, made learnings, and that I would like to share with you today. I spent 6 years in studying civil engineering. Here in Spain, before it used to be 4 years of undergrad plus 2 years of master's. Afterwards, I went on to work in major infrastructure projects across Europe, Italy, Spain, Germany, and Ireland. After 10 years working in construction, I started posing this question to myself. Do I want to be doing the same for the next 10 years? The answer was no. And it wasn't because of the company I was working at, or because of the market, or because of the sector. Yeah, the crisis made me think and got me reflecting. But the truth was, I really love tech. And I've always loved how startups were able to come into a mature market and turn it upside down. And I really wanted to be a part of that. I didn't want to keep on asking myself for the rest of my life, what would have happened if I had the guts to make the transition? And I know it's hard, and a lot of people tend to keep their jobs and say, okay, I've invested so much, not only time, but effort, and this career, I don't know what it would be of me if I just left. But truth is, you're wasting, this is all sunk cost. And the minute you're not doing what you like is the minute you're losing. So yeah, cut your losses short and make the transition as soon as you can. For myself, I decided that the 10 years I spent in construction we're not gonna determine if I go into tech or not, right? So I just left it behind and made the transition. So once you decided to make the pivot, it can come to you and say, the fundamental question of how do I go into an industry that I know absolutely nothing about, right? I started interviewing for startups and realized fairly on that all the skill sets that I thought were super valuable for the rest of my life, my employers or future employees-to-be were saying they were not transferable to this industry. So I came to a very tough realization, and that was that if I were to make that transition, I was going to have to start from the very, very bottom in terms of salary and in terms of responsibility as well. And at that moment, one can ask oneself, right? Say, am I willing to take this risk? And for me, this quote was eye-opening. It was said by Sheryl Sandberg, that's Facebook COO, and she said it was the best career advice she'd ever received, right? So if you're on a rocket ship, if you're offered a seat on a rocket ship, get on, and don't ask what the seat is. And that's what I did. So I got on a rocket ship that was headed in the direction that I was wanted, and I started working at the startup. And I didn't ask what seat that was. And it was a pretty crappy one. I started working as an intern when I was 28 years old. And you might think, is that worth it to start working at an intern when you have accomplished a certain amount and you've come a long way. Well, I think it's worth it if you're 28, if you're 30, if you're 40, it doesn't matter. As long as you're working at a company that you love, having the impact that you're expecting, and also that will bring you the opportunities down the line that are amazing, no? And are aligned with your objectives in life. And another pretty scary thing is starting from zero. So starting from zero means, in many cases, taking a salary cut. But we say, listen, rejoice, it's a new beginning, and embrace it. Embrace that you're earning less, get rid of unnecessary cost, unnecessary obligations that have tied you to a certain lifestyle, and enjoy the flexibility, the light, and how light you've become in order to take more risks and to pursue a career that you love. And enjoy the ride. For us, Ariel and I, it's been an amazing journey so far. We've learned so much each day. This situation, starting from scratch, has pushed us, and the feeling is sort of like going back to kindergarten, where every day you're learning something new, something unexpected. And with the progress, it's counted on a daily basis, which was something that we are really enjoying, and we think it's incredible. And yeah, starting from scratch, it's an opportunity that doesn't come along every day in your life. So we say, enjoy it, and take that opportunity to reprogram your operating system and reprogram your career.
So unprogramming at the end of the day is not about reacting to changes in the macroeconomic conditions or fleeing away from dying industries. It's a new lens on how to approach new career opportunities. It's just saying it's not only about prestige, stability, or the income that I'm gonna make. It's about identifying your passions and having the courage to pursue them. In our case, Gonzalo wake up every day and we feel privileged that we have an immediate impact on everyone that we touch. We couldn't be happier. And sure, you already mentioned we're taking severe pay cuts from like 5 or 6 years ago. Maybe we're not as sexy when we go out to a bar and present ourselves to a bar. Our parents will never understand what we're teaching in our courses. But to us, it doesn't matter. We couldn't be happier, and you could as well. So we invite you all, if you're in a similar situation, to take out that keyboard and start hacking away your career and unprogram it. It will be life-changing.